Hi, thank you for joining us and learning more about online public offerings. I'm Kinsey Cronin, Director of Business Development at StartEngine, and I will be walking you through the basics. So let's get started. Raising your next round with StartEngine. Okay, it's everything you need to know about online public offerings. So in order to understand what we're talking about here, let's go back in time for a minute and look at what it was like to raise capital between 1933 and 2016. So this is coming out of the Depression when the SEC started making laws around how companies could raise capital up until very recently when the Jobs Act came into effect. So basically, you needed to have that pre-existing relationship with accredited investors, which is currently about the top 4 or 5% of people by wealth in the United States. They were the only people that were allowed to invest in early stage companies that weren't public, and you had to know them. You weren't allowed to just go and solicit the investment from them. So this is important to understand because it can help you understand why there are certain norms and why what we're doing here at StartEngine is new and different. History. So it all starts with the Jobs Act, which was signed in 2012. That's the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act, and it was designed to make it easier for businesses to raise capital and to update a system that was predating the internet and culture as we know it, which involves a lot of information sharing and all kinds of sharing and community support of projects. So in 2016, Elio Motors was the first company to take advantage of part of the Jobs Act, which had come into effect, which we call a large OPO, is also known as Regulation A+, and they raised nearly $17 million in their large OPO. And in May of 2016, the small OPO came into effect. So that's Regulation Crowdfunding, also known as Title III of the Jobs Act. There's a lot of names for the same thing in this industry. That allows companies to only raise up to $1.07 million at this point. At the time, it was just $1 million, but now it is $1.07 million. But they are able to do that at a much lower cost, and it's a lot easier. The filings are much lighter. So many companies will start with a small OPO before they think about doing any other type of raise. By December of last year, the end of the year, the OPO industry had raised over $1 billion in capital and was growing at 20% per month. So this is something that is really growing very fast, and with the rise of cryptocurrency and ICOs, it's growing even faster. So what's live on StartEngine? We've got ourselves, StartEngine. We are drinking our own Kool-Aid, and we have raised over $3.4 million under the same regulations that our customers, our clients, also raise. Waverly Labs is a really cool earpiece that translates languages on the spot. It's very cool. They've raised $1.07 million, and they're closing today. And then MedX is an organic pesticide designed specifically for cannabis, and they have raised $1.4 million. Here are some of the companies that have launched today or very recently. ZipZap is an app that transfers money internationally. Burrow 5 Pictures, that is a film company, which is exciting. And Screen Door Greenhouse, it's indoor gardening. So you can tell that there's a lot of different types of companies that can raise on StartEngine. And that's why we show you what we've got today. And if you were an investor, this would be the process you would go through. You would go to StartEngine and discover companies. You might also click on a link that's an ad that's specifically for one raise. So if you're an issuer and you're launching your own raise, you can put out all kinds of different advertisements. And when somebody clicks on the ad, it goes straight to your campaign page. So once the investors are on the page, they watch your video, they read up on your story, who you are, read the terms of the investment opportunity, click the Invest Now button, and it's a pretty easy process. You can see here, you say how much you want to invest, and you provide some personal information. If you're investing less than $2,000, it's pretty easy. If you invest over $2,000, we require a little bit more information to verify the investor's identity. So a little bit about what StartEngine has been doing so far. We have over 120,000 users investing on the site. We have, on average, over 30% of the investors for any given raise do come from our pre-existing community. I want to be clear about that, though. If you're thinking about doing a raise with StartEngine, it's really, the smart thing is to imagine that none of the investment is going to come from us, because people who rely too much on the StartEngine community tend to be disappointed. And the reason for that is that it's 30% really at any given time. So if you haven't raised anything, then 30% of nothing is zero. If you've raised $12,000, then maybe $4,000 of that has come in from StartEngine. But you can't launch a campaign and just expect the StartEngine investors to all jump in. They've done it before. It happens occasionally, but you're probably not going to be successful if you're launching with that expectation. The average investment per investor is about $1,500, and over 18% of our investors are repeat investors. So we do have quite a few investors who are checking back all the time and are really interested in diversifying their StartEngine portfolio. Thus far, we've raised over $48 million for over 95 companies. We did almost 100 in 2017 alone. The average raise for a large OPO is $4.75 million, and the average raise for a small OPO is just shy of $400,000, with a 68% success rate overall. Momentum, yep, we've been launching 25 to 30 companies per month. We have a secondary trading platform that we've launched as well, where investors can go and get some liquidity. That's still early. There's not a lot of volume there yet. And one of the reasons is because for most of the regulations that are used on the platform, there's a 1-year lock. So it takes a year under a small OPO or a select OPO before investors can start trading. Under a large OPO, they actually can start right away, which is cool. Again, I keep saying OPO, and this is a good time to remind you that that stands for Online Public Offering. And it is sort of like an IPO. It sounds like an IPO, but it doesn't involve all the wear and tear. It's not nearly as expensive. It doesn't come with the same level of yearly reporting, and it is appropriate for companies at very early stages. So let's go a little bit deeper into what is involved in a small OPO. Again, this is regulation crowdfunding or Title III of the Jobs Act. Under a small OPO, you can raise up to $1.07 million per year, and the general public can invest. As a company, you don't need to have any kind of SEC qualification. You do need to file a Form C, which includes basic legal disclosures, and if you're raising over $107,000, it does require a CPA review, a financial review of your company. But if you are raising under $107,000, you don't need to have that CPA review, which can save you a little bit of money. You cannot do any kind of marketing or soliciting of investment until the raise is live. And I mentioned locking, the 1-year lock. The shares do become tradable after 1 year. And how much does it cost to do this? The upfront cost for a raise that's under $107,000 can actually be as little as nothing. It's pretty rare. You usually need at least some money for marketing, and you may want to get a little advice on the financial and legal side of it, but it is not required. As far as raising more than $107,000, the costs for financial review and legal documentation typically run between $4,000 and $10,000. And StartEngine has a premium fee, which is $5,000. That is to put together your offering, file the paperwork for you, and build your campaign page for you. The premium is optional, but it is highly recommended. It makes the process much easier for you, and we do find that there is a much higher average raise for companies that go with StartEngine Premium, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. After the raise, or while you're dispersing during the raise, there is a 6% fee of the total that is raised. There's an additional 2% on anything that comes from an international investor, and an additional 4% for anything that comes through credit card investments. Now, there's another type of raise that's called a select OPO, and then, of course, the large OPO. The select OPO is also known as a Reg D 506C, and it allows you to raise an unlimited amount of money, but only from accredited investors. You can't solicit investors until the raise is live, the same as the small OPO. and there are no specific financials required, although some investors may request it. The SEC doesn't require qualification, and a filing is also not required, although it is recommended. And the shares become tradable after 1 year, but they are only tradable among accredited investors. For the large OPO, you can raise up to $50 million per year, which is amazing. And the SEC does require a qualification. So there are extensive legal disclosures in the Form 1A and a 2-year independent CPA audit. So the SEC will go back and forth with your lawyer who provides all this information, and that can take a few months, 3 to 5 months typically, to get up and running. And once you're launched, you will have probably spent to get up and running, and it does cost somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 in legal and accounting fees. We can help introduce you to lawyers and accountants who have done this before if you don't have one, or you can work with people you already know. The cool thing about a large OPO is you can do something called test the waters and solicit investors prior to your raise. So you can let people know you're going to do your raise. And once your offering closes, the shares are tradable immediately, which is very exciting for your investors. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the types of companies that have launched on StartEngine and what they've done. Saunders electric car. So the dream was build the most attractive, affordable electric car ever. And there wasn't a company yet, but there was a big group of fans who had been following and believed in this idea. So the team incorporated a new company. They set a pre-money valuation of $33 million on their brand new company that didn't even have a prototype yet. They offered a $120 minimum investment and ran a 75-day campaign under which they raised $1 million from over 1,600 investors. And they were a premium service company. And then they went on and did a large OPO after that because they oversubscribed. Okay, golf boards. So the dream was enliven golf for a generation that can't handle a 3-hour round. One of the biggest problems for golf courses and country clubs in America right now is that the younger generations are not spending as much time on the golf course as the generations that came before them. So the golf board's a great solution for that. It's a way to make golfing a little bit more fun. You can see that it's sort of like a motorized skateboard that holds your clubs, and it's fun to ride. So the golf board company decided to set a pre-money valuation of $8 million and offer a minimum investment of $125 per investor. What they were able to do is take advantage of press. So they knew that during their campaign there was this one day that they were going to be at the biggest golf conference of their year. And once they had the numbers in from that conference, which was about $2 million in revenue that one day, and they announced it, the various financial publications really took note of that, because here's an opportunity for anybody, not just an accredited investor or somebody who did this all the time, but any regular Joe with $125 could invest in this company that had a current valuation of $8 million, had an amazing team with a great track record, and had just done a $2 million day. So they started writing about it, and it pretty much went viral very quickly and oversubscribed in just a couple of days, which was really exciting. So from the time that they oversubscribed, what they decided to do was do a select OPO and pull all of the accredited investors over into the select, which allowed them to raise more than the maximum of $1 million, which was the maximum at the time, and allowed them to raise an additional $600,000. And they were a premium service, and they're a lot of fun. So here are some of the advantages and disadvantages of raising from the crowd, because we want to be really clear about this. So the advantages are that you get to set your own terms. There's not a negotiation process with the investors, which, by the way, that could be a disadvantage if you aren't smart about it, but usually it's an advantage. It means that you get to decide the terms of how your company is going to move forward with this money. You also get to build brand ambassadors. So we mentioned with Golf Board, getting people to invest and then go out to their country clubs and their golf courses and say, hey, why don't we have golf boards here? It's just a really great way to get people to be excited about your product and to tell their their peers and their communities, which may also be in your demographic, about your product, and to maintain loyalty, because if they're invested in you, they're far less likely to switch to a competitor. It also achieves multiple goals at once. So while you're raising your capital, you're also marketing your company, which increases sales. That's really fun and cool. So if you have a marketing budget for your company that you're planning on spending anyway to create some brand awareness, you can be doing that while you're also raising working capital for the company. The other cool thing is you can just keep doing it. So each of the numbers we've given you for the maximums of what can be raised under these regulations are on a yearly basis, which means that if you get it figured out and you know the right formula for your company to raise money, you can keep doing it year after year. Now let's look at the disadvantages. These are important. One is that your financials will be public. Now for many companies, this is not really a disadvantage. They're comfortable with it. But for some companies, that's a problem, and you really need to make sure that you are comfortable having your financials be public. In addition to them being public while you're raising, there's also some yearly reporting that needs to be done. It's once a year with the small OPOs and twice a year with the large OPOs. Sharing that financial information is got to be something you're comfortable with. And of course, successful raises take focus, strategy, and hard work, and there is no way around that. If you're the CEO and you've got a lot on your plate and you don't have time to make this your priority, that's okay, but you definitely need to assign somebody for whom this is the most important thing. It's got to be somebody's most important thing, and that person needs to be checking in every single day, looking at the numbers, tracking what's working, what's not working, cutting the things that aren't working, and putting more resources into what is as far as marketing. If you don't do that, look, is it possible you could raise all the money that you need? Yes, it's possible, but it's not likely. You really need to be ready to make this a priority. And then finally, as I mentioned, there are some yearly reporting obligations, and they're listed here, yearly for the small OPO and semi-annual for large OPO. Marketing your small OPO. This is really fun. People always have questions about this. So here's just a few ideas, and we do have a marketing guide which we can share with you as you move along in the process of building your campaign. But here's some of the best ways. Email campaigns. Saunders did 12 days of emails as they came to the end of their campaign, and it worked. It was great. On the day when there were still 12 days to go, they said, hey guys, we're going to be emailing you every single day for the next 12 days. Get ready. And then they did it. And then I think they raised a couple $100,000 in a week to make sure that they maxed out and raised that $1 million. Campaign updates are super important. This is probably one of the most undervalued parts of the StartEngine platform. Every time you post an update, not only does it go to your current investors as an email, it also goes as an email to anybody who is following your campaign. Typically, for any campaign, there are about twice as many people following the raise as have actually invested. So what you want to be able to do is post an update. Yes, it gets added to the bottom of your campaign page, but you also want to be able to take advantage of that opportunity to send an email right into the inbox of anybody who has clicked follow and started paying attention to your raise specifically. Paid media is great. You can use Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads. Go nuts with your paid media. There are some limitations on what you can say, but not how you, not the medium with which you go for it. And the great thing about paid media is it usually has a lot of tracking, and you can see what's working best. I always recommend that you start with very small amounts of money as your tests, and then see what works, and put more funds into what's working. Contests are great. This is one of our campaigns. This is an actual jetpack. That man is flying around without anything underneath him. He has jet fuel on his shoulders. And he did a great contest. So contests are great for before you launch your campaign so that you can gather email addresses. So you offer a prize, one prize, and there's a company called Gleam, and there are a few others that do this. But basically, if I want to win your prize, I need to provide my contact information. But if I want more entries to improve my chances of winning your prize, I can also give you the contact information for my friends, or I can tweet, or I can post on Facebook. And the more of those things that I do, the more entries I have to win the prize. That's a great way for you to collect lots and lots of contact information right before you come back with the opportunity for an investment. Perks are also great. You are actually selling investment securities in your company, but you can add perks to help encourage people who are investing to invest a little bit more. So maybe I can get in at $200, but if I invest $500, I get a discount, or if I invest a couple grand, I get to have lunch with the CEO, that sort of thing. And you can check out some of the campaigns on our platform. Many of them have great perks that are really exciting and incentivizing for investors. As far as press, I mentioned golf board. That's another mention of the golf board. Press is amazing. The more press you can get, the better. It can be tricky, so find a way to make your campaign interesting enough that everybody wants to talk about it. And then influencer marketing. So this is Rayton Solar used Bill Nye the Science Guy to explain their complicated B2B business model with lasers and materials that they were using to build solar panels, and it was very complicated and confusing, and Bill Nye did an amazing job of making it simple and easy to understand, and they did a great job. They've raised a lot of money, over $6 million, I believe. And the cool thing that they did is they shot with the influencer one time, made the ad that they wanted to make, and then they were able to take screenshots from that, and they actually had him against a green screen, and they were able to turn those screenshots and snippets from the main campaign video into all kinds of ads that they were able to push, and that is something that is really valuable. So if you are thinking about working with an influencer, just make sure you shoot something that you get to own so that you can repackage it and use it many times. So how do you get started? First, go to StartEngine.com, then create an account and click Raise Capital. It's that easy. From there, we'll be walking you through all the steps, all the information that needs to be filled out. There are all kinds of videos you can see here, videos that explain how to do it or how to create your story. There are examples and templates. And you can see up here, there are 8 tabs. The first 5 all have to do with your marketing. They all have to do with telling your story and letting the investors know who you are. The final 3 are all about your filing. So this is also going to be something your investors can and should read, but you're going to be filing a Form C, and much of what's in the Form C comes through those tabs. Once you have filled everything out and you click Submit, as long as everything has been filled out, it will go to our due diligence team, which will make the first set of reviews. So StartEngine Premium is something I mentioned a little bit earlier. The companies that go through this route typically raise more money than the ones that don't. It comes with streamlined onboarding, marketing consultants, creative services, workshopping. So it's definitely a great tool. I recommend it. You can chat with me or anybody on my team about it. Again, it's not required, but it does help make the process a lot more fun and easy. Here are some of the companies that we have worked with that have decided to go with premium. You can recognize some of them, I'm sure, and they have all done really well. So I want to thank you for joining us. Please always feel free to come back to this video if you have any questions, and we hope that we will see your company on our platform soon.